Act 3, Scene 1. Before we get going too far into this, I want to focus on that literary element underneath the building background called foil. You should have this on your list already. If you don't, you'll want to put it on there. This is a word you might not have heard before, but the concept is not, or should not be, too difficult to understand. The definition really explains about as good as I can. You know, it's a minor character whose attitudes, beliefs, and behavior differ significantly from those of a main character. Usually these differences, usually these traits of this particular minor character are mere opposites of the main character that we're studying. And so our main character, Macbeth, there will be more characters sprinkled throughout these next couple acts that will surface as marked foils for Macbeth. Okay? And they have these traits that this individual lacks. Okay? Or if it's a bad character, a bad main character, what are those traits that make that person bad? The foil probably doesn't have those traits. Okay, if that makes sense. So it's really nice definition here. Foils are pretty simple. As people start to, new characters come out, not really new characters, but more developed of some of the minor characters, I think we'll have a better appreciation as to what the foils are for this particular piece. Act 3, Scene 1. The conclusion of Act 2 saw Duncan dead, saw Malcolm and Donald Bain flee. One goes to England, one goes to Ireland for their protection. We see that the Macbeth has been named king, and he was going to Scone in order to be crowned. We see that Macduff wasn't going to go and be supportive for whatever reason, whether that was jealousy or maybe he's still in shock or he doesn't trust, whatever it is. He chose not to go. And so, time has passed. Now we have Macbeth as king. I want you to keep an eye on Macbeth's demeanor, how he composes himself. He's a king now, so is he acting kingly? Do we see some of his earlier traits from Act 1 pop up, where he's very, heroic and people look up to him? Or is he more of the second act where he was kind of whiny and confused? Is he something completely different? Kind of paint a picture as to what that truly looks like. Banquo starts off with a minor soliloquy here right at the beginning. And in it, again, soliloquies, these are pretty much inner monologues coming out. And he's starting to question Macbeth's role in what happened, whether he did something for it or whether it was just dumb luck. But he's having thoughts in his mind. And then Macbeth is going to talk with him and finally get that opportunity that they've been putting off for a while, since Act 1. But then ultimately Macbeth has a meeting with a couple individuals. What is the purpose of this particular meeting? Act 3, Scene 1. Banquo, we get to hear his inner monologue a little bit here with the soliloquy. Thou hast it now, King Cawdor Glamis all, as the weird women promised. And here's where we really hear and understand what he's thinking. And I fear thou playedst most foully for it. Foully for it. So he thinks that Macbeth did something. And so when Macbeth comes in and they have this scene together, Macbeth and Banquo, you can imagine the tension, the perceived tension, because both individuals are having bad thoughts about the other person. We don't know about Macbeth yet, okay, but now that we're coming back and looking at it, this should be a lot more tension, okay, walking on eggshells, trying to figure it out. If you've seen the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, they're married spies. And there's a scene when they finally figure out that both of them are spies and that they are trying to kill each other. And they're serving dinner and they're just kind of, you know what I mean? Those that have seen it, they're just kind of back and forth, just kind of slowly cutting their food, wondering if it's poison, just kind of feeling them out to see if it's true. It's really one of the best scenes in the movie. It's a good movie. But here, these individuals here are back and forth as well. And it's kind of interesting because the way that Macbeth elicits some responses and some answers from Banquo is kind of clever. 353, He says, Macbeth goes, "Ride you this afternoon?" "Aye, my lord." "So you're going riding? Good. Well, come back, because I want, fail not our feast. So come back for our feast. You know, we're going to eat tonight. So this afternoon, while you go riding, come back for our evening feast." "Oh, my lord, I'll be there. That's fine." Macbeth, "We hear our bloody cousins are bestowed in England and in Ireland, not confessing their cruel parricide, but filling their hearers with strange invention." So, Banquo, we found out where the killers are. And what do you think Banquo's mind's thinking? Sure. Right, I hear you. But instead, Macbeth is pushing on, trying to paint this picture that he had nothing to do with it. And they're not over there, they're not out there, talking about how they killed their dad. They're over there spreading false rumors about what happened in Scotland. So they're not preaching their guilt, they're preaching their innocence and spreading, whatever. His last line to Macbeth there, to Banquo, on line 35, he goes, "Oh, adieu, till you return at night," so you come back at night. "Go Fleance with you?" You see how sneaky this guy is? "So is your son going with you?" I'm just kind of curious. No, there's no ulterior. I'm just curious. Is Fleance going with you? And ultimately goes, "Aye, my lord, he is." "Well, then you guys have a safe trip and a safe ride. Everything's great. I will see you tonight." Right? It's one of those things. So he leaves, and Macbeth now has another soliloquy. This is his soliloquy where he figures out, well, not he figures out, but he conveys to us exactly what he's thinking. Our fears in Banquo stick deep. Banquo is the only one who can unravel this. Okay? He is the only one who was there with the Weird Sisters, who knows about it, because Macbeth hasn't told anyone. "Well, he told his wife." Yeah, but that doesn't count. Okay? Obviously, he told his wife. Okay? Banquo hasn't told anybody. And he knows, it's kind of like tying up loose ends. Have you heard that phrase before from movies? Anybody that can connect you to the crime, they kind of start to disappear to protect yourself, covering your tracks. Okay? In essence is what it is. The purple there. "There is none but he whose being I do fear. And under him my genius is rebuked, as it is said Mark Antony's was with Caesar." So he's repressed, he's held back, he can't commit completely to being king, to doing what he wants, because he has heard this, not hasn't heard, but he's witnessed this thing with Banquo, and so he's still fearful of it. He's breaking days like, what? My prophecies have come true. So if my prophecies have come true, whose else are probably going to come true? The only other person, right? Banquo. And so if Banquo's come true, let's see, what were his? Let's see, you're not going to be happy, but you're going to be much happier. And ultimately the one was, you will not be king, but you will have kings. Now they didn't say your son will be king, but your heirs will become king. And they said nothing about me. I don't have an heir. Which is interesting, because remember how Lady Macbeth says, "I have given suck and know how tender it is to milk the babe, love the babe that milks me." So she's had a kid before. Maybe something with SIDS. Maybe the child just died. Maybe there was something. Okay? But this is one of those times I'm like, maybe there's a contradiction. Maybe he does have a little girl, and that's not going to be an heir, and he knows that. It's just never that big of a plot point to establish that they are, have children running around the castle and such. But ultimately, I have to do something, because the top of 355, it says, "The seeds of Banquo king." So I must do something about that. So what does he do? He sets up a meeting with some characters. Look at those character names. They're not something that you would name normal people. They're called first murderer and second murderer. What do you think their profession is? Okay? He's enlisting these hitmen, these assassins, to take care of Banquo. And not just Banquo, but Fleance. And it's really kind of brilliant to see Macbeth, he's making these choices. Lady Macbeth knows nothing of this. He's making these choices to help cement their future and their legacy. He tells them stories on 355. He paints them a picture about how Banquo has wronged you, and how Banquo is your enemy. And brothers and friends, if he is your enemy, he's also my enemy. I, your king. See how he brings himself down to their level to speak with them? They probably would do a lot more for that individual than if he was up there, I want you to kill him. But now he makes them take ownership of wanting to kill them. Them being, him mainly, Banquo. Now he pretty much says, you know what, there is a child, Fleance. His death is as important, if not greater, than the father's death. Fleance's son that keeps him company, whose absence is no less material to me than is his father's, must embrace the fate of that dark hour. Okay, so after a page or so of Banquo being painted as a villain to these individuals, remember when Banquo wronged you and yours? Yes, well, we hate Banquo. Now I want you to kill him, and I want you to take out his son for me. Aye, it will be done. Okay, so we see Macbeth making plans. We see Macbeth doing what needs to be done in order to keep his future and his destiny rosy and pretty. Lady Macbeth is nowhere here. So, do we see a change in him? Yeah. We don't see the sniveling coward from earlier. We see a completely different person who wants to retain and hold on to that power and such. Scene 2. Lady Macbeth and Macbeth are going to be talking, and she's going to notice that something is wrong with Macbeth, and here is her opportunity to hear about what is going on. And look at, does he come straight out and tell her the specifics? Does he play coy with it? If he does, why does he or doesn't he share with her? Don't they pretty much, partners in crime? So kind of answer those questions. It's a very short one, and these next couple scenes are pretty short. 357. Scene 2, page 357. Lady Macbeth, after Macbeth enters, how now, my lord? Why do you keep so alone? Bottom line, what's done is done. What's going on with you? She could tell that there's something different. His response is, we have scorched the snake, not killed it. She'll close and be herself while our poor Malice remains in danger of her former tooth. And this will be one of the times that he refers to him as, we haven't completely killed. It's kind of like if somebody says you want to finish them off because you hurt them a lot, but you didn't completely do the finishing move, like in Mortal Kombat or something. There's still opportunity for them to still be alive. And for example, he'll refer to this individual as a worm, where now they're young, but given time, their venom will come in, and when they strike and grow, they will be dangerous. Movie Clash of the Titans. Remember, he was scorned and scarred as a child, and he lives his life for vengeance upon that particular person, right? The new Conan movie. I mean, this is a thing that happens all the time. So-and-so as a child, is crushed, and then they want vengeance. Original Batman movie. Bruce Wayne sees his parents killed by the Joker, by Jack Nicholson. Okay? He doesn't seek out the Joker long term, but it molds his life, and then he takes some satisfaction when he's up against the Joker, because that will, hopefully fix some of the past. And so he goes into detail about how Duncan is at peace. That Duncan, after a life of fitful, what do you call it? Well, hold on, let me see. Line 20, right around in there. Talking about, in sleep is the affliction of these terrible dreams that shake us not. I can't sleep at night because we haven't fully completed what we need to. I need to take care of this one thing. And he doesn't come out and say Banquo, but I need to take care of this issue, and I can't sleep at night. Duncan, who's dead, he's sleeping beautifully. He doesn't have to worry about his future in treason and torture or whatever. He's done. He's relaxed. And Lady Macbeth, come on. Get over it. It's fine. Leave this. You must leave this. Macbeth says that, we must have masks covering our heart. Just like how he used to say false face must hide what false heart does know. And she said that you must be the flower, outside, but the serpent under it. Now he's the one saying that I have to present this certain outer appearance in order to protect what I'm thinking. My mind, full of scorpions, is my mind, dear wife. I can't just leave this alone. I need to take care of some business. Well, what is it? What's to be done? Look at his response, line 45. Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck, till thou applaud the deed. So don't worry about it. You don't need to think about it. But when it happens, you'll know it, and you'll applaud me for it, that I did what needed to be done. You notice who isn't the planner anymore? Do you remember how Lady Macbeth was taking him under her wing earlier? He's doing everything now. He's already got the ball rolling to kill Banquo and Fleance. And he's telling her about how we have to protect ourselves, and don't worry, I'll take care of all. So she's kind of coming down a little bit in strongness of character and kind of assuming the wife-queen role a little bit as opposed to the big role of planner and an actor of revenge or vengeance and all of that. Scene 3, the murder scene of Banquo. First murder, second murder. Macbeth actually sends a third murder, pretty short scene. Do they achieve their goal of Banquo and Fleance? Scene 3, the murder scene. Macbeth sends a third person to come, that surprise the other two. They surprise Banquo and they kill him. But unfortunately, they let whom survive? Fleance, who is just as important. Those were the words out of Macbeth's mouth. Just as important as the father. And so they say, let's go and tell Macbeth about what has transpired. Scene 4 is a banquet hall, that feast that Macbeth had told Banquo about, that, hey, I'll see you tonight, right? After your ride, you'll be back. And so now we're having the feast. And obviously Macbeth doesn't expect Banquo to show up. Okay, and so this is one of the most famous scenes in the play, and we have the murderers going to show up, or one of them, to come and tell him. How does he react to that? How does he respond to that? Okay, he does get a visitor in this scene, a very famous visitor, and that's kind of all I want to tell you about it. So pay attention to that. How does Macbeth respond? How does he react? How does Lady Macbeth react? Do the roles that they've established, the dominance, does that change a little bit again, one way or the other? And then how do the past, just kind of paint a picture in your mind as this is happening and see how people are responding. Scene 4. The banquet scene, famous because of a particular visitor, the ghost of Banquo. There are a lot of ghosts in his plays. They usually show up once, maybe twice, and they're very, very pivotal and important. These are the type of roles that Shakespeare himself would have probably portrayed. Not so much the main character Macbeth, but an important character later on. Hamlet finds out who the killer of his dad was through his ghost of his dad. At the end of Julius Caesar, the ghost of Caesar comes and speaks to Brutus before their battle. And so they are very, very important. This particular one just kind of shows up and sits at an empty seat. And so when Macbeth's followers say, hey, come sit with us, he looks and there's the ghost of Banquo. Who did this? Who did this? No one can blame me. There's no way I could do it. No, imagine you're the rest of the crew there, at the dinner. You don't see anything. You just see your king kind of acting weird and acting strange. And you really don't want to see your leader of the country acting in such having such fits. Where's that line? The purple on 361, we see the aside that I was alluding to earlier. He's glad that Banquo was killed, but with Fleance, he goes, there the grown serpent lies. The worm that's fled hath nature that in time will venom breed, no teeth for the present. So right now, Fleance can't hurt him. But given time and resources, maybe he can develop that venom and come back and sting him and bite him. But the ghost shows up. Thou canst say that I did it. Never shake thy gory locks at me. Then Ross says, guys, we need to leave. He's not feeling well. Lady Macbeth, sit, relax, keep your seat. The fit is momentary. Those that know him understand this. If you note him, if you pay attention to him, and you will insult him. So just ignore it. It'll pass. It'll pass. Lady Macbeth, proper stuff. She goes, are you a man? And so we see those roles kind of revert to the way they were back in the first act. when she needed to slap him around a little bit to kind of control him. This is the air-drawn dagger which you said led you to Duncan. Remember the fake dagger in his imagination. This is your imagination. There was no dagger. There's no ghost here. Okay? Let's get smart about this. You don't want to incriminate yourself about anything. If I stand here, I saw him. So there was a ghost here. I wasn't imagining it. It was here. It was here. Macbeth does say that, my most worthy friends, I have a strange infirmity which is nothing to those that know me. So he plays that game like, I have these fits every once in a while. And those of you who truly know me understand that. And if you don't understand it, it's because you don't know me too well. But this is normal, and so be calm with it. It's fine. And then the ghost comes back in, and he doesn't notice it right away. So you can imagine, kind of comical in nature, where he would just turn around and the ghost is right there. Okay, there's a video clip I have on Moodle of a scene from a Macbeth movie where the ghost just kind of starts walking towards Macbeth a little bit, pointing a finger. And for somebody with a guilty conscience and paranoid like he is, it backs him away and makes him cower almost in a fetal position. And that's where Lady Macbeth has everybody escorted out of there, and they are left alone. He has some issues. He needs somebody to talk to. Okay? And he says, I will go talk to those 3 weird sisters tomorrow. I need to know what my future, now that my prophecies are Banquo, do I have to worry about Banquo? There is much that they need to explain. Okay? That isn't the end. We are mentioning of Macduff, too, at the top of about line 129. How sayest thou that Macduff denies his persons at our greeting? So he was invited and he denied coming. And so we can see that they don't see eye to eye on certain things. Macduff isn't fully supportive of Macbeth. This is beyond, in the future from where we last saw him, where he goes, no, I'm going to go home. This time has passed. And so now we see Macduff and Macbeth kind of separating a little bit. He's not listening, or he turned down the invitation of the king. If you're invited to court, do you think it's wise to turn that down? Probably not. I want you to come see me. Yeah, it doesn't work for me. It's the king. Okay, so you do show up. Scene 5, notice the location, a heath. This is where the witches met Macbeth previously. This is where they predicted we will meet Macbeth after the battle's been lost and won and all of that. This particular scene has an introduction of a new character, Hecate, however you want to pronounce it. She is the witch's boss, I guess is the easiest way to say it. She's a little upset at the witches because look at all the drama they've been causing by, telling the future to a certain person. You shouldn't be messing with the future. You shouldn't do that. And look at the way that she reprimands them and all of the death and stuff that's occurred because of what they did. But ultimately, she has a call to action where she requires them to do something. See if you can figure out exactly what it is she wants those witches to do. Because at the end of Act 3, at the end of Scene 4, Act 3, we saw the banquet scene, and Macbeth was kind of going nuts with the ghosts of Banquo, and he said that, tomorrow, in the future, I'm going to go see the weird sisters again. I'm going to go see the witches and find out my future. Okay? And so he's going to seek them out. The witches, you think they know that he's going to come? Well, they were able to predict it when he wasn't going to come before. That type of thing. So look at what Hecate recommends them to do, and I recommend, commanding them to do. So the first witch addresses her, why, how now, Hecate, you look angrily. Well, have I not reason, hags, as you are saucy and overbold? How dare you tell these things to Macbeth? How dare you share this? So she's reprimanding them pretty fiercely. And you can imagine the hags probably don't like to be talked to like that. You see at the very last line, quick, let's get away, she'll come back soon. And so they're trying to get away. But ultimately, she's upset about them for all of the damage that their prophecies have caused. Not that they were lying, they were telling the truth, but you shouldn't be telling morals and people with ambition like that, what the future's going to be. because it could impact, the fabric of time, which we saw it actually happen. And she calls that to trade in traffic. How did you dare to trade in traffic with Macbeth in riddles and affairs and death? Notice kind of the little rhyme. She's really the only character in this play that has these rhymes playing out and such, these couplets, and it's kind of a neat little interjection difference of pattern in prose, or styles of prose. Her plan on 366, around 16, 17, right around there, she says that we're going to make a spell, and when you see Macbeth in the near future, because you're going to see him, I want you to tell him something. I want you to fix this. I want you to rectify this. You've caused a lot of damage. Correct it. I want you to fix it. Your vessels and your spells will provide your charms and everything besides. Then jump down to 29. And ultimately all of this shall draw him on into his confusion, ruin, so should make his downfall. He shall spurn fate, scorn death, and bear his hopes above wisdom, grace, and fear. And you all know security is mortal's chiefest enemy. And so they're going to tell him things that make him extremely overconfident. They're going to tell him things that make him spurn fate, scorn death, and bear his hopes above wisdom. So when he should be, smart, he's not going to be. It's important that we remember these 3 or 4 lines. This in conjunction with what the witches tell him next act, it should make a lot of sense. So we want you to tell him things that will make him sound invincible. We want you to make him sound and be, just the ultimate, that nothing can harm him, so that he is going to scorn fate and dismiss all of these other things. Okay? So they're going to make him overconfident, going to make him arrogant and cocky, and so on. And so that's ultimately how they're going to, Hecate wants the witches to rectify and correct this situation. Scene 6, the palace at Forest. We're going to see a couple, Thane and Lords, a couple individuals of Scotland, just kind of putting a ribbon on Act 3. This is the first scene with Macbeth as the king. The first act with Macbeth as the king. And we're going to see them kind of talking and hashing out. We're going to kind of see, what do they think about Macbeth? Because the only person to really have negative feelings about him that we've witnessed are Banquo, having those thoughts. Macduff, maybe just not totally accepting of the situation right now. What do these people think? And we're going to hear them talk about it here in this very short scene. But then at the very end of the scene, I think it paints a pretty dark picture for what Scotland is truly like. Scene 6. Lennox kind of gives a little snapshot here as to, in case any of you were struggling with what's been transpiring in the last 2 acts, let me kind of get you caught up. And so he explains what happens. The gracious Duncan was pitied by Macbeth. Marry, he's dead. And Banquo walked too late. Fleance killed for, Banquo walked too late, whom you may say, if it please you, Fleance killed. So they even think Fleance may have killed his dad, for Fleance fled. And so we have the sons killing parents and then running away, is what they're saying, because so-and-so flees, so-and-so must be guilty. And that's why they're going to do it. Men must not walk too late. You must not be out too late, or else bad things will happen. For it was for Malcolm and for Donalbain to kill their gracious father. Damn it fact, how it did grieve Macbeth. Did he not straight in pious rage the 2 delinquents tear, that were the slaves of drink and thralls of sleep? Was not that nobly done? Aye, and wisely too, for 'twould have angered any heart alive to hear the men deny it. So that's a different way of thinking about it. Wasn't it a good thing he killed those guys right away? Because it would have made us even angry to hear them actually have the stomach to deny it. And so that it's an interesting way of figuring it out, what's going on. Yeah, and he continues, but peace, for from broad words and cause he failed his presence at the tyrant's feast, I hear Macduff lives in disgrace. Sir, can you tell where he bestows himself? He refers to Macbeth as a tyrant here. Okay? And there's a footnote earlier, I don't know, line 3 or 4, where it says that Lennox is kind of mocking all of this stuff. So he's presenting it in a way where all of these things are just kind of seem too perfect to be true. All of these things are happening. And I don't think everything is as it says it is. Okay, so that one little footnote is important to see, because otherwise you get to him saying tyrant's feast, and you're like, well, what are we talking about? So it's almost like he's saying this stuff in a sarcastic way. Okay? Oh, it's a good thing he killed those guys. You read it one way, but with the footnotes, you read it a different way. And then they even say Macduff, he lives in disgrace because he failed to show up. Where is it at? Where is it at? Where is it at? It says that he lives in England's court, the son of Duncan, so Malcolm. Well, Donalbain's his son too, but we knew that Malcolm took off. He goes, he lives in English court and is received of the most pious Edward, with such grace that the malevolence of fortune nothing takes from his high respect. Thither Macduff is gone to pray the holy king. So we have Malcolm, who didn't just escape to England, he's hanging out with the King of England. And he's telling him about what's been going on in Scotland. And Macduff is there now. Okay, so we know that Macduff, he's not necessarily a traitor to Scotland, he's just not a supporter of Macbeth, and he's gone to be with the true king, because Malcolm, as we know, is the true heir. And they are with the King of England. And notice how they referred to him as the most pious. They will tell stories about him, down here at the bottom. And these are one of those elements of a foil where we have a minor character, maybe even a character that's not even here, that has those characteristics that the main character doesn't have. Okay, is Macbeth considered a pious, noble, healing king? No. Okay. Maybe the old Macbeth was that way, but corrupted by the thought of ambition and power, he de-evolved to some degree. Bottom line 35, 36, 37, around in that area. And ultimately Macbeth, in this report, hearing about Macduff, hearing about Malcolm, hearing about everybody meeting up in England, and this report has so exacerbated the king that he prepares for some attempt of war. Well, sent he to Macduff? He did, and with an absolute, "Sir, not I," the cloudy messenger turns his back and hums, as who should say, "You'll rue the time that clogs me with this answer." And so Macbeth is preparing for some sort of a war, some sort of attempt at the throne. That's the only thing he can see is playing out that way. And so he goes, well, did he send for Macbeth? He did. But what was Macbeth sent for Macduff. I get those names confused. Macbeth sent for Macduff, but Macduff said, "Sir, not I will not answer to the king." And the messenger like, "Oh, you're going to rue the day you sent me back with such a bad message," okay, to the king. Because the king probably isn't told no all that often, especially when he calls. Bottom of 45. He hopes that they return from England. They may soon return to this our suffering country under a hand accursed. And this scene is really the first time that we see anybody having negative thoughts about Scotland, having negative thoughts about Macbeth outside of Banquo and what we imply that or think that Macduff has. This is the first time that we see these gentlemen. And that footnote, if you missed that footnote, about the, Lennox kind of mocking the situation, mocking Macbeth, and the word tyrant's feast, you might have gotten a different reading of this scene. But ultimately, those last couple lines, if you missed all of that, those last couple lines should have told you that they think that their country is a curse. Not like witchcraft, demons, a curse and a hex on you, but this is not a good situation. We don't have a good ruler right now. And they had a good ruler in Duncan. They loved Duncan. Everybody loved Duncan. And so for now them to say that it's a curse, it's mainly because of Macbeth.